My name is Cora Vance. For as long as I can remember, I have been a daughter of the coast, raised on the wild, windswept shores of the Mornington Peninsula, an hour's drive from Melbourne. The scent of salt and eucalyptus is woven into the fabric of my earliest memories, a constant hum beneath the surface of my life. My grandmother, a woman with the sea in her eyes and paint on her fingertips, taught me to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. She taught me to find the beauty in the curve of a weathered piece of driftwood, the resilience in a windswept banksia tree clinging to a cliff. It was from her that I inherited a love for form and function, a passion that led me to a career in architecture, a field where I could build worlds from light, space, and dreams. For the past 5 years, I had built my world in Melbourne, a city of vibrant laneways, hidden gardens, and a thrumming creative energy that fed my soul. My career at Stellan and Croft, a prestigious architectural firm, was flourishing. I loved the challenge of transforming a client's vague desires into a tangible structure, a home that would hold their lives. My own home was a sanctuary I had crafted with my husband, Leo. We lived in a bright, airy apartment in South Yarra, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city's twinkling expanse. It was a life of clean lines, shared laughter, and a quiet, comfortable rhythm I had come to believe was the very definition of happiness. We had been married for 8 years, and in my mind, our love was the cornerstone of the beautiful structure I had so carefully built. It was solid, dependable, and true. Or so I believed. The change was insidious, a slow erosion of self that began so subtly I almost didn't notice. It started as a faint, persistent fatigue, the kind that settles deep in your bones and no amount of sleep can seem to touch. At first, I blamed my demanding schedule at Stellan and Croft. We were in the final stages of a major public library project, a design I had poured my heart and soul into for the better part of a year. The long hours, the pressure to meet deadlines, it was natural to feel drained. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Cora, Leo would say, his voice a soft murmur of concern as he wrapped his arms around me in the evenings. "You're a perfectionist. You need to learn to switch off." His concern was a warm blanket. Every night, after we'd cleared the dinner plates, he would perform a small, loving ritual. He'd brew me a special herbal tea, a blend he said he sourced from a little artisan shop in the Dandenong Ranges. It was a fragrant mix of chamomile, lavender, and something else, something earthy and sweet that he called his secret ingredient for serenity. "Drink this, my love," he'd say, placing the steaming ceramic mug in my hands. His smile was gentle, his eyes, the color of warm toffee, crinkling at the corners. "It will help you rest. You deserve a deep, peaceful sleep." And the sleep it brought was deep. Fathomless, even. One sip of the warm, floral liquid and a heavy curtain would descend, pulling me under into a thick, dreamless void. I'd stumble to our bedroom, the world swimming at the edges of my vision, and collapse onto the cool linen sheets, gone before my head even settled on the pillow. It wasn't the restorative sleep of the righteous, however. I would wake in the morning feeling not refreshed, but hollowed out, as if a vital part of me had been scooped away in the night. A dull throb would pulse behind my eyes, and a thick fog would cling to my thoughts, making it difficult to grasp onto a clear idea. The fog began to seep into my work. I, who prided myself on my meticulous attention to detail, started making mistakes. Small things at first, a miscalculation on a blueprint, a forgotten email to a contractor. Then, the errors grew more significant. I specified the wrong grade of steel for a structural support beam, a mistake that was caught by a junior engineer and cost the firm a considerable amount to rectify. Mr. Croft, a man whose respect I had worked so hard to earn, called me into his glass-walled office. His expression wasn't angry, but something worse, disappointed. "Is everything all right, Cora?" he asked, his voice kind but his gaze searching. "You're not yourself lately. Your work has always been impeccable." I mumbled an apology, blaming stress and fatigue, my cheeks burning with a shame so hot it felt like a fever. I fled his office feeling like a fraud. The confident architect I once was now a stranger to me. My self-worth, once a sturdy, well-designed structure, felt like it was crumbling, its foundations riddled with unseen cracks. At home, the vibrant colors of my life seemed to have faded to gray. The simple joy of sketching in my notepad, of feeling the smooth glide of graphite on paper, was gone. Chopping vegetables for dinner felt like a monumental effort, my limbs leaden, my mind a murky swamp. Leo remained a pillar of solicitous care, his nightly tea ritual an unwavering constant. But even his touch began to feel different. His embraces, once a source of comfort, now felt more like they were holding me in place, a gentle confinement. His smiles didn't always reach his eyes, and sometimes I would catch a fleeting flicker of something else in his gaze, a guarded tension, a flicker of irritation that he would quickly mask with a sheepish apology. "Sorry, darling, long day," he'd say, blaming the pressure of his work as a financial consultant at Vantage Capital. "The market is a beast." I tried to talk to him, to explain the profound wrongness I felt inside. "Leo, I feel like I'm disappearing," I whispered one night, the words feeling fragile and thin in the quiet of our living room. "My memory is shot, I can't focus. I'm scared." He pulled me close, stroking my hair. "You're just exhausted, my love. Completely burnt out. You know what we need? A holiday. A week away in the Yarra Valley, just the two of us. We'll go wine tasting, sit by a fire. It will fix everything." His solution was a soothing balm, but it didn't touch the deep, cold knot of fear in my gut. My intuition, a compass that had always been my truest guide, was screaming at me. It wasn't just burnout. Something was fundamentally, terrifyingly wrong. The turning point came on a Tuesday evening, gray and drizzly, the kind of Melbourne day that seeps into your bones. Leo placed the familiar mug of tea on the coffee table in front of me. Steam curled from the surface, carrying the scent of lavender and lies. As I reached for it, a sudden, ice-cold thought pierced the fog in my mind, so sharp and clear it was like a shard of glass. What if it's the tea? The thought was followed by a more horrifying one, a question that felt like a betrayal to even form. What if he's doing this to me? The absurdity of it made me feel dizzy. Leo. My gentle, loving Leo. The man who held my hand at my grandmother's funeral, who celebrated my every success and soothed my every failure. The man I had promised to love and trust. How could I even entertain such a monstrous idea? It was a sickness of my own stressed-out mind, surely. And yet, the thought took root. A tiny, poisonous seed planted in the barren ground of my confusion. It refused to be dismissed. It was the only thing that made sense of the relentless fatigue, the memory loss, the feeling of being slowly erased. My mind flashed back to a conversation I'd had with my dearest friend, Maya, the week before. Maya was my anchor. We'd been friends since our university days, she in wellness and philosophy, me in the rigid world of lines and angles. She ran a small, beautiful yoga and wellness studio in Fitzroy, a sanctuary of calm and light. We'd met for coffee at our favorite laneway cafe, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and rain-dampened cobblestones. I had poured out my anxieties, my voice barely a whisper over the clatter of the espresso machine. "I just feel disconnected," I'd confessed, tracing patterns in the condensation on my water glass. Like I'm watching my life through a pane of smudged glass. Maya had listened, her dark, compassionate eyes never leaving my face. She didn't offer easy platitudes. Instead, she asked questions. "What's your body telling you, Cora? If you quiet your mind and just listen to your physical self, what does it say?" I'd mentioned the fatigue, the headaches. And then I told her about Leo's nightly tea. "It's sweet of him," I'd said, almost defensively. "He's just trying to help me relax." Maya had stirred her matcha latte, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. "Is it a prepackaged tea? Or a loose-leaf blend?" "Loose leaf," I'd replied. "He gets it from a special place." "And he's the only one who prepares it?" she'd asked, her voice gentle but insistent. At the time, her line of questioning had seemed odd, but now, sitting in my living room with the suspect mug warming my hands, her words echoed with a chilling prescience. I decided, in that moment, that I had to know. The fear of being wrong was terrifying, but the fear of being right was a chasm opening at my feet. I had to know what was on the other side. That night, I resolved to follow a different ritual. I picked up the mug, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Thank you, honey," I said, forcing a weary smile that felt like a brittle mask. "I think I'll take this to the bedroom. I'm just going to read for a little while." He nodded, his eyes already on the television, a financial news channel humming in the background. "Good idea. Don't stay up too late." I walked down the hallway, my steps feeling unsteady. In the ensuite bathroom, with the door firmly closed, I turned on the tap. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the mug steady. I watched as the pale, amber liquid swirled down the drain, a silent, sickening torrent of betrayal. I rinsed the mug thoroughly, then filled it with warm tap water before returning to the bedroom. Later, when Leo came to bed, I was already under the covers, my breathing practiced and even, mimicking the deep, drugged sleep he had grown accustomed to. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, a dark silhouette against the dim light from the hall. I could feel his gaze on me, heavy and assessing. Then, he approached the bed. His footsteps were soft, almost soundless on the wool rug. He leaned over me, his breath warm on my cheek, and gently shook my shoulder. "Cora," he whispered. "Cora, you asleep?" I remained utterly still, my body relaxed, every muscle screaming with tension. A lifetime seemed to pass in that single, suspended moment. Satisfied, he retreated, closing the bedroom door with a soft click. For the first time in months, I was awake. Every sense was on high alert. The fog miraculously lifted, replaced by the stark, terrifying clarity of adrenaline. I lay frozen, listening. I heard the faint clink of glass, the rustle of papers, the low hum of my laptop booting up in the living room. The sounds were quiet, furtive, the sounds of someone who believed they were alone. After what felt like an eternity, I was certain he was occupied. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold on the polished floorboards. My body felt light, untethered from the usual leaden weight. I crept to the bedroom door, easing it open a fraction of an inch. My breath caught in my throat. The scene in the living room would be forever seared into my memory. Leo sat at my desk, bathed in the cold, blue glow of my laptop screen. His face, usually so open and kind, was a mask of tense concentration. He was moving with a swift, methodical purpose that chilled me to the bone. He was in my private files. Not just my work files from Stellan and Croft, but my personal folders, the ones protected by passwords I thought only I knew. My blood ran cold as I watched him. He was copying files onto a sleek, black USB drive. He clicked open my personal finance folder, the one that held the details of the inheritance my grandmother had left me, a portfolio of shares and a small but significant sum of money, just over $200,000, that I had carefully invested. It was my safety net, my link to her, my foundation for the future. He was scrolling through bank statements, transaction histories, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Then he opened another folder, one I had named Portsea Dreaming. It contained my most precious, personal work, sketches, notes, and preliminary designs for the small, weathered beach house on the Mornington Peninsula that had been my grandmother's. It was mine now, a sacred trust. I dreamed of one day renovating it, of preserving its humble charm while infusing it with light and air, a tribute to her spirit. He was taking screenshots of the property deeds, the council plans, the valuation documents I had stored there. This wasn't just a violation, it was a desecration. He wasn't just stealing from me, he was systematically dismantling my life, my history, my dreams, all while I lay in a chemical stupor just a few feet away. The question of why hammered in my head. Was this about money? A secret debt? A double life? He worked for nearly an hour. When he was finished, he ejected the USB drive, slipped it into his briefcase, and carefully cleared the computer's recent activity log. He scanned the room, his eyes darting nervously, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought he'd seen me. I shrank back behind the door, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. He moved back towards the bedroom, his steps cautious. I scrambled back into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin, resuming my charade of deep sleep just as the door creaked open. I felt the mattress dip as he sat on the edge of the bed. His hand gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Sleep well, my love," he murmured, his voice a low, intimate whisper that now dripped with a poison more potent than anything he could put in a cup of tea. "Everything is going to be just fine." He lay down beside me, and soon, his steady breathing filled the room. But I did not sleep. I lay awake until the first pale fingers of dawn crept through the blinds, my mind a maelstrom of shock, grief, and a white-hot, rising rage. The beautiful house of my life had not just developed cracks, its very foundations had been deliberately dynamited by the one person I had trusted to hold it safe. The morning was a study in surreal normalcy. Leo woke, showered, and made coffee, moving through our sun-drenched kitchen with the easy familiarity of a man with nothing to hide. He kissed my forehead as he left for work. "Have a good day, Cora." The door closed behind him, and the sound of the lock clicking into place was like a starting gun. My hands were shaking as I dialed Maya's number. I was in my home office, the scene of the crime, and the air still felt thick with betrayal. "Maya," I said, my voice a cracked whisper. "You were right. It's all true." I didn't need to explain. Her voice was calm, firm, cutting through my panic like a beacon. "Where are you?" "At home." "He just left for work." "Stay there. Don't touch anything." "I'm on my way." She arrived less than 30 minutes later, not with recriminations or idle usos, but with a large canvas tote bag, 2 empty packing boxes, and an expression of fierce, unwavering solidarity. "What's all this?" I asked, my voice hollow as I gestured to the boxes. "This is your rescue kit," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We are getting everything important, everything that is fundamentally yours, out of this house today. We are not leaving him a single piece of leverage." We worked with a quiet, focused urgency. Maya, with her centered presence, was my director. We gathered my vital documents, my passport, my birth certificate, the original deed to the Portsea Beach house, which I kept in a fireproof box in my closet. I packed my grandmother's journals and her worn leather-bound sketchbook, its pages filled with her delicate drawings of shells and seabirds. These felt more valuable than gold. I found the small, locked box where I kept a few $1,000s in emergency cash and a collection of my grandmother's silver and turquoise jewelry. "The bank accounts," Maya said, looking up from the desk where she was carefully sorting papers. "You have a joint account with him, but what about your personal accounts?" "The inheritance. It's in a separate investment account, in my name only," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "Good. But he knows the details. We have to assume he'll try to access it." Her pragmatism was a life raft. "You need a lawyer, Cora." "Today." I nodded, my mind starting to clear. "I know who to call." With my most precious belongings packed and stowed in Maya's car, a fragile sense of control began to settle over me. We sat for a moment at my kitchen table, the morning sun streaming in, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The silence was heavy with unspoken grief. "I can't believe this is my life," I whispered, staring at the empty space on the shelf where my grandmother's journals used to be. "I loved him, Maya. I really, truly loved him." She reached across the table and took my hand, her grip firm and warm. "I know you did, Cora. The love was real for you. That doesn't make you a fool. It makes you a person who loved. What he did, that's about him. It's a reflection of his own brokenness, not your worth." She squeezed my hand. You are so much stronger than he thinks you are. You're stronger than you think you are. Now let's go see that lawyer. Ms. Isabel Davies' office was in a heritage building on Collins Street, a world of polished mahogany, towering bookshelves, and the quiet, reassuring scent of old paper and leather. A mess. Davies herself was in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a calm, commanding presence that instantly put me at ease. Please, Cora, sit down, she said, gesturing to a comfortable leather chair. Maya called ahead and gave me a brief outline. Why don't you start from the beginning? My voice trembled at first, but as I recounted the events, the tea, the feigned sleep, the late-night theft of my data, my story gained momentum, fueled by a righteous anger. I laid out the details of my inheritance, the Portsea property, my professional work. Ms. Davies listened without interruption, her expression unreadable, taking meticulous notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen. First of all, I want to acknowledge how incredibly brave you were, she said, her voice filled with a genuine warmth that steadied my nerves. You trusted your intuition, and you gathered undeniable proof. That takes immense courage. She then laid out a clear, methodical plan of action. Our first priority is to protect you and your assets. Immediately. I have the forms right here. We will freeze all of your accounts, both personal and joint. We will place a fraud alert on your credit profile to block any attempts to take out loans in your name. You will change every single password you have, banking, email, social media, everything. I want you to use a password generator and make them impossible to guess. She slid a stack of papers across the desk. As I signed each one, my hand shaking slightly, I felt not like a victim, but like a warrior taking back her territory. Each signature was a declaration of independence, a severing of ties that had become toxic. Finally, Ms. Davies said, her gaze softening, you cannot go back to your apartment. It is not safe. Do you have somewhere to stay? I'll stay with Maya, I said, my voice firm. Good, she nodded. I will initiate divorce proceedings immediately on the grounds of financial abuse and deceit. We have a strong case, Cora. We will fight to protect everything that is yours, especially your grandmother's property. Now go, follow these steps, and let me handle the rest. You've done the hard part. Leaving her office, I felt a flicker of empowerment ignite within the hollow space in my chest. I had a plan. I had an ally. I was no longer drifting in a fog. I was moving forward. That evening, tucked into the cozy guest room of Maya's apartment in Fitzroy, surrounded by the scent of sandalwood and the soft glow of a salt lamp, my phone rang. It was Leo. I stared at his name on the screen, my heart beginning to race. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet, leafy street below. Then I answered. Hello. Cora. Thank God. Where are you? I've been calling all day. I came home, and you're gone. Some of your things are gone. What's happening? His voice was a frantic, panicked rush. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before I spoke, my voice colder and clearer than I ever thought it could be. I know, Leo. No? No what? Cora, you're scaring me. Talk to me. I know about the tea, I said, each word a carefully placed stone. I know about you going through my computer. I know you've been copying my financial records and the files for my grandmother's house. I know everything. A thick, suffocating silence. Then, a choked whisper. Cora. I can explain. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. Can you? Can you explain why you've been drugging your wife? Can you explain why you've been plotting to steal her inheritance? The home her grandmother left her. My voice rose, fueled by months of suppressed fear and confusion. I saw you, Leo. I was awake. I love you, he stammered, his panic palpable. I would never hurt you. Love. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. This isn't love. This is control. It's theft. It's the deepest betrayal I could ever imagine. I have a lawyer, Leo. I'm filing for divorce. and I will make sure you don't get away with this." I ended the call, my hand trembling, but my resolve was like steel. A fire had been lit inside me, and it was burning away the fog, the fear, and the woman who had allowed her own intuition to be silenced. The next day, an email from Ms. Davies arrived. It was the final, devastating blow. She had, through legal channels, intercepted messages between Leo and another woman, a colleague from his firm named Chloe. The messages were a brazen, chilling chronicle of their plan. They were going to drain my accounts, secure a large loan against the Portsea property, and then disappear to start a new life in Bali. In one message, Leo had written, "Don't worry, babe. She's completely out of it. So trusting. Another couple of months and we'll be on a beach, and she'll be left with nothing. Her inheritance will build our dream villa." The words were a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I read them over and over, the raw cruelty of it all washing over me in waves of sickness and humiliation. Maya found me sitting on the floor, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. She didn't say a word. She just knelt beside me, wrapped her arms around me, and held me while I grieved for the man I thought I had married, for the life I thought I had built. I was mourning a ghost, a beautiful lie. But as Maya held me, a strange sense of release began to bloom beneath the pain. The truth, in all its ugly, heartbreaking glory, was out. And the truth, I was beginning to understand, was the only foundation on which a new life could be built. In the weeks that followed, I did not return to the city. I couldn't. The apartment we had shared felt tainted, a stage set for a play I no longer had a part in. Instead, I drove down the coast, back to the one place that had always felt like true north, my grandmother's beach house in Portsea. It was a humble timber-framed cottage, weathered to a soft silver gray by years of salt and sun. It stood on a quiet, sandy lane, nestled amongst gnarled tea trees and the spiky foliage of coastal banksias. The air smelled of drying seaweed, hot sand, and the faint, sweet perfume of the climbing jasmine that tangled over the front porch. This was my sanctuary. The legal battle with Leo was a distant, ugly noise, handled with cool efficiency by Ms. Davies. I signed papers she couriered to me, answered her calls, but my focus was elsewhere. I was engaged in a different kind of restoration project. I started by simply being in the space. I walked the beach every morning at sunrise, watching the sky blush from violet to rose to fiery orange. I collected shells and smooth, sea-worn stones, just as my grandmother had taught me. I sat on the porch and read her journals, her elegant script filling the pages with observations about the tides, the birds, and the shifting light. I was reconnecting with her, and in doing so, I was reconnecting with myself. Slowly, tentatively, I began to work on the house. I didn't start with grand architectural plans. I started with my hands. I sanded back the old, salt-encrusted timber of the deck until the beautiful, warm grain was revealed. I painted the interior walls a soft, creamy white that captured the coastal light. I planted a small vegetable garden in the sunny backyard. Each task was a meditation, a physical act of reclaiming and rebuilding. One afternoon, I unpacked my grandmother's old sketchbook and my own pencils. I sat on the deck, looking out at the sliver of turquoise ocean visible between the trees, and I began to draw. Not for a client, not for a project, but for the sheer joy of it. I sketched the intricate pattern of a banksia cone, the curve of the bay, the way the late afternoon light fell across the weathered floorboards. The line between my hand and the paper felt true and clear again. The fog was gone. I resigned from Stellan and Croft, a decision that felt less like a loss and more like a liberation. My work there had been tied to the person I was with, Leo, the ambitious, high-achieving architect. The person I was becoming was quieter, more interested in creating spaces that felt soulful and sustainable, not just impressive. I decided to start my own small practice, right here from the coast, focusing on thoughtful, environmentally conscious residential design. Cora Vance Architects. It was just a name on a piece of paper, but it felt like the truest thing I had ever built. My friendship with Maya deepened. She drove down from the city most weekends, bringing groceries, good wine, and her quiet, unwavering presence. We would walk on the beach, cook together, and talk for hours. With her, I learned to set boundaries, to say no when I meant no, to honor my own needs. I learned that true strength wasn't about being perfect or invulnerable. It was about being authentic, about showing up for yourself with the same compassion you would offer a friend. A little over a year had passed. The divorce was finalized. Leo, faced with irrefutable evidence, had been forced to settle. I kept my inheritance, my savings, and, most importantly, the Portsea house, my sanctuary. He was left with his debts and the consequences of his actions. I heard through the grapevine that he and Chloe had broken up, his grand Bali dream dissolving into the harsh reality of his own making. I was in Melbourne for a meeting with a new client. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, and the city was bathed in a soft, golden light. I was walking through the Fitzroy Gardens, the path carpeted in a mosaic of fallen leaves, when I saw him. Leo was sitting on a bench, staring at the duck pond. He looked diminished. The confident, charming man I had known was gone, replaced by someone with weary, haunted eyes and a slump to his shoulders. He looked up, and our gazes met across the lawn. A year ago, seeing him would have sent a shockwave of anger and pain through me. Now, I felt a surprising stillness. He stood up and took a hesitant step towards me, his expression a mixture of shame and a desperate, pleading hope. I didn't run. I didn't turn away. I simply stood my ground, my feet planted firmly on the earth. "Cora," he said, his voice raspy. He stopped a few feet away from me. I know I have no right, but I just wanted to say, I am so sorry. For everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a monster, but a deeply flawed, broken man who had tried to fix his own emptiness by draining the life from someone else. The anger I had held onto for so long had faded, replaced by a quiet, clear-eyed pity. "I know you are, Leo," I said, and my voice was calm. "It was my own. The damage you did was immense. It nearly broke me. But it didn't." Tears welled in his eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" he whispered. I thought for a long moment, the cool air on my cheeks, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling my senses. I thought of the woman I had been, lost in a fog of her own making, and the woman I was now, standing in the clear, autumn light. Forgiveness was a complex terrain. "I forgive the person you hurt because she no longer exists," I said softly. "I have let her go. And I have let go of the pain you caused. It doesn't have a place in my life anymore." I took a small breath. "I hope you find a way to fix whatever is broken inside of you, Leo. I truly do. I hope you find your own peace." I didn't wait for a reply. I gave him a small, final nod, and then I turned and walked away, my steps light and steady on the leaf-strewn path. I didn't look back. Ahead of me, the city's skyline rose against the vast, open sky. My future was there, and here, by the sea. It was a structure I was still designing, a life I was building myself, from the ground up, on a foundation of self-respect, resilience, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge of my own worth. And it was beautiful.